Thank you.
And David, on the health care issue, Senator Joe Lieberman is hearing it from some constituents and actually from a group that he may be vaguely familiar with. Take a look at this ad that's now running in Connecticut.
As chair of the Connecticut for Lieberman Party, I'd like to explain Joe Lieberman's opposition to the public health insurance option. We know that Connecticut voters support it 3-1, but Joe never forgets who he ran to represent, himself. See, Connecticut for Lieberman, not vice versa.
Careful what you do with your political organization. The Connecticut for Lieberman Party is an actual organization that's been taken over by liberals in his home state because he let it atrophy after the campaign.
Of course, that ad may be a little late since the public option right now seems to be off
whoops.
the table.
Yeah,
so
how
I don't know.
about that?
I don't know that the group running that had their calendar right.
Kevin Madden.
Shouldn't there be like a sign saying flashing sarcasm?
That's right, sarcasm. Kevin Madden, let's start with jobs and this new push from the administration. A lot going on this week, and they're trying to get a message through about jobs. Do you see some stake behind the sizzle?
I don't. I think, and the biggest problem right now, which is burdening their message, is the fact that deficit and spending. I mean, you heard Senator Gregg articulate perfectly the Republican message, and I think I think he recognizes the anxiety of so many voters, not just Republicans, but independents and many conservative Democrats, that the spending is out of control, that Washington is engaged in a continued, continues to be engaged on the status quo, and that there's this giant disconnect between what Washington is doing and what the American people want to see when it comes to action on the economy. And again, the bigger problem is that this president is, he overpromised and underdelivered on the stimulus, and now you're seeing that come back to haunt him.
If jobs start coming back, we saw a decrease in this last month, 11,000 jobs lost, ticked down from 10.2% unemployment to 10%. If that continues throughout next year, do you expect that the electorate will care a little less about deficit and spending if jobs start coming back?
I don't, and I think that one of the things that you see is the American public has actually, in the wake of this sour economy, has become very conservative in their households. And they look at Washington with spending and a radical expansion of government, and they see that as totally at odds with what they do in their own house. And the one thing that the president's never going to be able to run for, even though you see a trend line go down with those jobs, and we may get to 9 or maybe 8.5%, if at best, the most rosy scenarios, the spendings and deficits are not going away for the next 10 years. And Republicans, I think, are starting to recognize right now that the red ink argument that we can make against the Democrats and a Washington status quo is the most powerful argument and is never going away.
And it ties together a lot of good themes for Republicans right now.
You can tie everything to spending and deficits right now. Health care, cap and tax. I mean, there's a number of jobs, a stimulus, TARP, slush funds. In the American collective sense, they put all of that into one big bucket, and it's Washington out of control.
And politically, do they not care that these started under George W. Bush, these deficits?
I think the American public right now is looking at a Congress that received an electoral mandate, a president that's received an electoral mandate to challenge the status quo, and they clearly have not. And they're not looking for an assignment of blame for whoever was there at the wheel in the past, but instead they have atomized expectations for what they want to see right now as far as job creation and the economy turning in the right direction.
Kevin, another big event coming up this week. The president's going to be heading over to Scandinavia to pick up his Nobel Peace Prize. Of course, he didn't want the prize necessarily in the first place. Probably didn't do him a lot of political favors. But what's the kind of message that you'd be looking for from him if you're advising the president on this? What does he need to say there, given a lot of the conflicting messages on the war of Afghanistan?
Look, I think that the White House recognizes that the criticism here was that here's somebody who made it all about him, and he's never done anything. And what you're going to see is the White House project an image that says, this isn't about me, and this is about the people who actually have done something. And this is a shared award, a shared responsibility. And sort of deflect away from his most recent actions, which was to essentially increase troop movement in Afghanistan.
Which they say they're not going to run away from, that he will address the fact that he's accepting a peace prize while escalating
the elephant in the room.
Yeah, no doubt.
You're going to have to acknowledge it.
No, in our final 30 seconds here, John Conyers, this was stunning.
Yes,
he comes out publicly, talks about the fact that the president called him to say, well, stop demeaning me. What do you make of this relationship?
Look, I read that article like 3 or 4 times because I was like, am I reading this right? I mean, it was a quite stunning article, very illuminating about how these relationships on Capitol Hill work. But I think the most important thing what I found very telling is that this president is very thin-skinned. That he does worry about what people think. And lastly, is that up on Capitol Hill, he may be liked. They love speeches. He is not feared, and that is a big political problem.
You've been saying that
that's an excellent point, indeed.
Kevin
Kevin Madden,
let's run the tape.
Strategist.
Run the tape.
We'll run it. We'll get it.
Thank you very much. That does it for this edition of Top Line. Click us on again tomorrow.
Twitter.com/The Note. Keep the conversation going. At least you don't contradict yourself when we run the tape.
You guys have like a flip-flop.